stories. When I was in middle school, I started dating this guy by the name of Nick. Nick was an 8th grader, I was a 7th grader. Now let me describe myself. I was 12 years old. I was fat. I wasn't pretty. I'm still not. I wasn't popular. Nick was cute. Not cute as in he was dreamy or hot, but cute as in he seemed very innocent, sheltered, and Disney-like. Nick asked me out to the St. Patrick's dance, and I said yes. Nick's father took us there and dropped us off, and later came and picked us up. On the way home, Nick's father passed right by the road he was supposed to take. "Sir, I think you missed the turn." I said, "Don't worry, dear. We're just going back to the house." Nick asked me to ask your mother if you could stay for dinner, and I said yes, Nick's father replied. This was around 2003, and cell phones were really crappy and really expensive. People were still using landline phones, so I wasn't able to call Mom immediately. I took his word for it. When we arrived at Nick's place, Nick got out of the car, and he seemed to be in a pouting mood. He seemed really upset about something. I asked Nick's father about it, and his father told me that he didn't know, and I believed in him. He got inside, and Nick's father cooks dinner, and Nick is in his room the whole time. I wasn't sure what was going on. Nick's father serves dinner, and we sit and eat dinner, and he is talking to me about school, and he is being really nice. Nick's father then turns on slow jazz and asks me to dance with him. I am confused and nervous. I didn't know what to do. He insisted, so I danced with him, and we are dancing. Nick's father pulls me closer to him. I tried to pull away because I could feel his erection through his pants. He shakes me violently and sticks his hand in my face. "Act right, you little bitch, or I won't take you home." So I'm scared to death, and Nick is still in his room and hasn't come out. Nick's father then drags me by the arm to the couch, forces me to sit down with him on the couch, and he turns on the TV and he turns it on, the adult channels, and then he starts jerking off. He then tells me to give him a blowjob. I am crying and begging him to take me home. Nick finally comes out of his room and says, "Please just take her home, Dad. You promised you wouldn't do this anymore." I'm in shock. I'm wondering what the fuck Nick means by anymore. Nick's father stands up and puts his penis back in his pants and walks over to Nick, and Nick slams the door. Nick's father turns back to me, and he is now in full-on rapist mode. "I'm done playing games. I'm going to get what I brought you here for, or you are never going home. And I swear to God, if you fucking tell anyone, I will fucking murder Nick, and I will tell everyone you broke his heart, and you'll be blamed for his death." Nick's father starts violently ripping my clothes off, and I'm screaming and crying, and he's trying to get me down on his bed. Nick's father gets me on the bed, and he puts his penis in me, and then I hear a pop, and Nick's father is out. I push Nick's father off of me, and I see Nick standing there with a 9 in his hand, barrel still smoking. He is in shock. I am in shock after being raped, and after Nick murdered his father. I disarm him, and he looks at me and mutters, I had no choice. It had to end." Nick says with tears in his eyes. I hug Nick and tell him, "I know." We hear sirens and look out the window, and the police are outside. We sneak out the back door and into the woods. We hide in Nick's underground shelter that he built when he was younger. It's buried deep in the woods. I see the corpse of a little girl, and I gasp. Nick covers my mouth and tells me to be quiet. Nick tells me that it is his little sister. Nick explains that his little sister was about 9 years old and that their father brutally raped and beat her. He built the underground shelter to hide her every time their father got drunk. When their father would get drunk, he'd molest his daughter and supposedly never remembered doing so. One night, Nick's sister said to her brother, "Nick, I'm tired of hiding. I heard there's a place where there's no pain. I want to go there." Nick knew what his sister was talking about, and with tears in his eyes and a heavy heart, Nick broke his sister's neck and buried her in the underground shelter. We were hiding from the police in the tomb of his dead sister. Nick was a serial killer. He had murdered his sister to protect her from their father's perverted ways, and he'd murdered his father tonight when his father tried to rape me. Nick told me that his father raped his best friend's sister, and his father promised that he'd never do it again. Nick's best friend gave Nick the 9 at school one day and told him, "When the time comes, you'll know what to do." The 9mm pistol was part of an investigation from another murder that had happened a few months ago, where Nick's friend Carl had shot and killed his bully Darren. Darren tormented Carl for months. The last straw was when Darren had trapped Carl in the boys' locker room and beat him to a bloody mess and an inch of his life, and even pissed on him and threw wet dog shit that had been sitting in a 5-gallon bucket fermenting for days all over him. Darren's friends laughed at Carl as he was laying there dying and bleeding. I don't know if they knew or didn't care that Darren had beaten him to near death for absolutely no reason other than because Carl wasn't able to defend himself. So Carl drove by Darren's house one night and shot and killed him. Carl shot him 7 times in lower back, legs, and the final shot was when Darren was laying on the ground and Carl walked up to him and Darren pleaded. Carl shot him in the heart. Nick was the only one other than Carl's homeboy that knew about the murder of Darren. Nick told me that Carl had joined his homeboy's gang and that Nick was considering joining the gang, and even encouraged me to join the gang as well. Nick told me that Carl said that his father was the initiation. It was his blood in, as he referred to it. Now, I'm no expert on the operations or politics or rituals of gang life, but Nick explained to me blood in, blood out meant when a person becomes a member of a certain gang, they must kill a designated person in order to join said gang, blood in, and the only way out of the gang is to die, blood out. I don't know what gang he was joining, or what gang he was wanting me to join, but he showed me Polaroids of some tattoos that Carl's cousin had gotten. Many of the tattoos were a mix of what appeared to be occult symbols, death, angels, roses, skulls, and graffiti-style lettering. He never told me the group's name, but he mentioned some of their allies and their enemies, which I won't mention. I told Nick that I didn't want to be in a gang. Nick hugged me and told me that he would always keep me safe. It's been 15 years, and I just learned that Nick and Carl were sentenced to life in prison for murdering over 23 pedophiles. Nick and Carl told the police, "Motherfuckers, if y'all pussy motherfuckers would do y'all job, then me and my homies wouldn't be out there catching bodies." Nick and Carl showed no remorse in court. There were 3 retrials because the DA would not accept the jury's decision to drop the charges. Many people view Nick and Carl as heroes, but apparently the DA didn't think that what they were doing was heroic at all. The The story that I'm about to tell you is a raw testimony of when I was younger. I was a part of a group. We would hang out downtown. We'd smoke cigarettes. We'd do drugs. We thought we were fucking badasses. But we weren't. As time went on, we became closer and things started to get a lot weirder. We would get into fights with other groups at the local bowling alley outside of town that we would go and hang out at. We had some friends up there, and the other group was also kind of like our second group. Some of us came from lower income households. I myself was born to alcoholic parents, and we were very poor. My cousin was born to a mother who smoked crack when she was pregnant with him. My other cousin was a recluse and didn't really do much. I'd got him into drugs and also introduced him to girls and helped him get laid. And I also introduced him to the homeboys. We would mostly sit around and smoke marijuana and occasionally drank. We also occasionally did bumps of coke when we could get them. We weren't really that bad into anything. We'd party and we'd just kind of talk shit. A few years later, some of us started to get into heavy drugs. My cousin and I started smoking methamphetamine. My other cousin, I think that he also got into smoking methamphetamine, but he didn't admit it. This one guy that I used to hang out at and party at his house, he had gone to jail for something. I wasn't sure what he'd gone to jail for, but he was in jail for a long time, and he had gotten out, and he had said that he had got stabbed in jail, and apparently he had gone back to jail for reasons that I'm not sure about, but it was probably drug related. He'd gone to jail originally because he had broken into his neighbor's house, and he had also got caught transporting a trunk full of crack cocaine. I believe that he was transporting something like 5 pounds of crack cocaine back to the ghetto in the town that I lived in. My other homeboy, he had started having problems with his girlfriend, and I told him to just let it go. Apparently his girlfriend was cheating on him, and he said that he was going to drive up there and he was going to beat the fuck out of the guy that she was cheating on him with. I told him that it's not worth throwing your life away over some dumb bitch that doesn't love you. Seriously, think about what you're doing. He told me that I was a pussy and that I was fake. At this point in my life, I was at the point where I was just like, whatever, go do whatever you gotta do, I don't really care. So he'd went up there and he'd attacked the guy that his girlfriend was cheating on him with, and then he got sent to prison for like 10 years. He had tried to message me on Facebook from jail because he was able to use the internet while he was there. I straight up told him, look dude, I told you not to go up there and start shit with her. I told you to just let it go. I told you to just leave it alone, that you didn't have to prove anything. And you didn't want to take my advice because you wanted to act like you were hard. So, don't expect any sympathy from me just because you're in jail. He agreed with me and he said that I was right and that he isn't asking for sympathy, but he just wanted to check up on me and ask me how I was. I told him that I was doing okay, still poor, still living in a dump, still lonely. I had let him know that one of our other friends had also gone to jail. He said that he knows because he had seen him in jail with him. See, I'd found out that the other friend had gotten stabbed in prison by this friend long before he had told me that he had gotten stabbed. Another one of my friends got shot. He was gunned down because he had gone to a trap house to go pick up, I guess that he was picking up dope or something. I think that he was trying to pick up methamphetamine or crack cocaine. Now, I have to admit that this cousin of mine was really, about that gang stuff. He wanted people to think he was hard, and he would get into fights, and he was like dealing drugs and stuff, and he thought that everybody was his homeboy and that he was cool with everybody. And I don't know what happened. He also thought that he could beat everybody's ass, so I think that someone must have said something to him that he didn't like, and he bowed up to them and tried to fight him, and they shot him and left him there, and they tried to burn the car to get rid of the body or something. Honestly, as bad as this is going to sound, no one was surprised when this guy got shot and killed. Me and my other cousin had called it before it even happened. I had somewhat predicted it. I mean, I was kind of into like divination and astrology and stuff, so I could see the future, possibly, maybe, or at least I thought that I could see the future. Look, I was also smoking a lot of dope back then, so there was no telling what I believed. But I'd predicted that my cousin would get gunned down for trying to be a dope boy. My other cousin had gone to jail for selling narcotics to an undercover cop. Another friend of mine had gone to jail because he had stolen a car on one of the nights that we were all, like me and two of my friends were smoking meth, and we were completely strung the fuck out, to be honest. And he had just casually gotten into this car. He had lifted down the visor, the keys fell down, and he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to my girlfriend's house. Like, really? You're just gonna drive to your girlfriend's house, like, just like that? Like, yeah, I'm gonna drive to my girlfriend's house. I'm gonna go there and fuck her. I'm gonna get some pussy, bruh. So, me and the other friend, we were just kind of like, alright, bruh, we'll see you later. We never seen him again. Apparently, he had gone to jail because he'd gone up there, and I don't know the story about what happened there. I think that he had gotten pulled over for driving the stolen car, because I think that the car lot that he had stole it from actually had reported the car stolen, and he had gotten arrested for it. So the friend that had gone out of town to beat up his girlfriend's or ex-girlfriend's current boyfriend, or the guy that she was cheating on him with, or whatever the story was, he had gotten out of jail after 10 years. And he had gotten a job doing construction, and it seemed like he was doing really well. And he had bought some methamphetamine, and the cops were chasing him for some reason. And he had gotten pulled over, and he had gotten scared. And I guess that he swallowed the methamphetamine to try to get rid of it, and it killed him because he had overdosed on methamphetamine. Honestly, I don't know why he didn't just shove it up his ass, or just throw it out the window, or just take the charge. Or better yet, I don't know why he even decided to go and get the stuff, knowing that he was still on parole. Seriously, I don't know what he was thinking. He could have had somebody else go and get it, or he could have just not been smoking methamphetamine in the first place. He had just gotten out of jail. He was still on parole. He had just gotten a great job. He was getting paid $15 an hour. Literally, $15 an hour. Working 12 hours a day. That's a lot of fucking money when you poor. You didn't need to smoke methamphetamine to have the energy to go to work during the day. You could have easily used energy drinks or something. I don't even know why he was smoking methamphetamine, to be honest. He had never had interest in it before. Another friend of mine was ran over by a car because I guess that he was fucking some guy's wife, and he had found out, and the guy ran him over. So the group that I was a part of had fallen apart, and we had all grown apart. Some of us became drug addicts. Some of us that were from the upper middle class families, they did well as expected. They became a manager at some, shitty retail store, or they'd gone to college. But for the ones that had grown up impoverished and poor, suffered from drug addiction, isolation, loneliness, poor diets, severe mental health issues. They were killed, they were stabbed, they were shot, they were robbed. Some of them overdosed, and some of them had just betrayed each other altogether. My entire life, I lived in what some people would call the ghetto. As a kid, I grew up in Inglewood on the south side of Chicago. My parents owned a liquor store somewhere around Kedzie. Not saying exactly where. We would always get robbed, but this one time my parents were involved in an armed robbery. After they decided to move our family out of that area, we moved close to Little Village. I made some friends there. Most of them were gangbangers. And then eventually I joined too, mostly because all my friends were doing it. So there were a group of us that were LKs. We would go around acting stupid, wearing baggy clothes with those rat tails. We would always be involved in fights and stealing. I liked it because it felt like I had a second family. We always fought with Satan disciples and 2 6s. Always. I have a bunch of stories about that, but the reason I got this is because I was walking home one day with my mom, and a rival gang member came up to me because he recognized me from before. He ended up trying to check me, and I ended up getting into a fight with him and getting stabbed in the leg. That was a sort of wake-up call for me to quit doing stupid shit and get my shit together, because I'm already considered an adult. I'm 19, but I was 18 then I got stabbed. I still talk to a lot of LKs that I knew, even though I stopped gangbanging. I still can't walk in certain hoods or streets because someone still gangbanging might recognize me, but I still hang around Little Village sometimes to see old friends. Since then, we have moved again to the Ashburn area of Chicago, and I still hang around Inglewood sometimes to catch up with old friends, but it's a terrible part of town. I joined a gang when I was 14. We were considered shorties to the actual big, bad gang in East Chicago, with the chance to be jumped in and marked a tattoo on the right calf at 16. Basically, we were a bunch of wannabes. There were a couple of big shit older kids who were our mentors, my big brother among them, but for the most part, it was a bunch of 12, 13, and 14-year-olds trying to be hard and playing badass, but it gave me what I needed at the time: camaraderie. My family had just moved out from the projects of Gary, Indiana, and to a little neighborhood right outside of Gary. I had no friends. We were still incredibly poor, and to top it off, my father had just been diagnosed with lung cancer. My other major male role model, my grandfather, was confined to a wheelchair in our living room, slowly dying of depression and rising numbers of strokes. Life really sucked. The gang that changed that. For a little while, I had friends again. After 2.5 years of every peer around me treating me with contempt because of the color of my skin, Even the one kid I considered a friend treated me like shit when other people were around. Having friends being part of a group, I'd have done any amount of shitty gang banging for that feeling. It didn't matter that I had very little in common with any of these people besides the fact that we were all poor. We did some bad shit, broke into a few houses, beat the living hell out of one poor bastard for betraying our trust, and that summer ended with me doing a 2-month-long stint in the Lake County Juvenile Center, which made living in the projects seem like a wet dream. But, for the most part, we just hung out together and acted like kids who were trying to act like they were too mature to act like kids. We'd smoke cigarettes thanks to a 19-year-old member of the gang who was my best friend at the time, but looking back, he was a complete and utter loser. Talked about banging chicks, talked about kicking the ass of rival gang members or the asshole jock at the school. Talked about how bad we'd be when we got to join the real gang in a couple of years. In hindsight, I realized we were all just ghetto nerds who had banded together for the sake of banding together. It was a brotherhood that I didn't know I desperately needed until I had it. They were there at my father's funeral. They were there at my grandfather's funeral. They were there, basically. If you are new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.